Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa usalli wa usallam ala Sayyid al-awwaleen wal akhirin. Nabiyyina Muhammadan wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barak wa sallam. All praise are due to Allah, Lord of the worlds, and peace and blessings be constantly showered upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad, the master of the first and the last, and his family, his companions, and all those who call to his way and establish his sunnah to the day of judgment. My beloved brothers and sisters, to our friends, our viewers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Alhamdulillah, this is another opportunity for us to gather in the New Muslim Corner. And the intention of this is to provide locally a place for new Muslims to gather, to be able to ask questions and to socialize and to find out different aspects of Islam that they might not be able to in the mainstream masjid. And then internationally, we are able to connect with new Muslims in different parts of the world and to share information and hopefully to answer some of the questions. So we are looking at a very critical aspect of Islamic understanding, and that is the life of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And through his life, we are able to understand the second part of the kalima, first being La ilaha illallah, and the second part is Muhammadur Rasulullah, that there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his messenger. And through understanding the life of the Prophet ﷺ, we can get a better feel as to the beauty of the revelation and the fact that Allah chose this particular individual in this time and in this place. And without understanding the place and the time and the people, it might be difficult to really envision, why would Allah choose people who lived in such a desolate place as the Arabian Peninsula 1400 years ago for a message that was supposed to last or is supposed to last to the Day of Judgment. But if you look at the Arabian Peninsula at the time, and we recognized that linguistically, the Arabs at the time had the ability to learn foreign languages fast, because by speaking Arabic, you have opened up the different parts of your mouth and your throat. So when you come into another language that pronounces letters in a certain way, it's easy to adapt because you're already opened up. It's like a person who is playing baseball. They say you're right hand or you're southpaw left, and some people can hit with both hands. So they're ready. If a person is throwing with the right hand, they'll go with the left, or they'll go the opposite. So similarly with language, Arabs had this ability to transcend the difficulties of language. Also in terms of culture, the Arabs at the time were not one particular racial group. So they were a mixture, a blending of different racial groups, and so it was easier for them to intermarry and to become parts of different societies because they were not so far away culturally in terms of their physical makeup. In terms of long distances, to travel long distances, because this message was tailor-made for the planet. And if somebody is living high in the north, in a mountain, it's very cold, and that's what they're used to, it doesn't seem probable for that person to be able to travel long distances and into different climates. But the Arabs at the time were mobile. Their culture was based on movement, because just to survive, you have to be a nomad, a Bedouin. So you need to move from one place to another. You can't be afraid to change your home. And that's important if you're the one who's supposed to take this message. Secondly, Allah blessed the Arabian Peninsula with the camel. And through the camel, the life of this animal that can survive in the desert and go long distances, they are able to travel long distances and to withstand difficulties. The Arabian steed, they were also riding probably the fastest horse on earth at the time. And even up until today, when people are racing their animals and they want to bet money even, they want to know who's going to win the race. The intelligent person who understands horses will check the DNA of that horse to actually see how much Arabian blood it has. Because if it has Arabian blood to a certain extent, then it will be very difficult to beat. And also, this horse is courageous. So some horses, when they come in front of another group of horses or animals or people, they get very nervous and want to. The Arabian steed is, a courageous animal. And with its connection to its master, it can actually go into battles. And it can move long distances. And it's moving faster than the other animals. So a lot of advantages were there. They were tailor-made, in a sense, to take the message out of their peninsula. Thirdly, they were living in a desert. And it's natural, if you can find a place that has water and life, you don't mind leaving. So they didn't mind leaving the Arabian Peninsula. And so Allah chose this group of people as the first catalyst for the message to start to spread around the world. And the Arabic, the Quran itself, was a form of Arabic that was easy for non-Arabic speaking people to learn, because the rules are very straightforward. You have to practice it if you're not an Arab. It'll take some time. But once you get into it, the rules are very straightforward. And you can become proficient in the language even though you don't fully understand the language. You can read it, you can write it when it started to be written. So these were the first people to believe. And the Prophet ﷺ started with his family, with his wife Khadija radiallahu anha, and then with the people of their household. They began to accept Islam and solidified the Prophet's own understanding of his faith. After that, when Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anh, when he accepted Islam, and he was of the same category as Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, just about his same age, economically and whatnot, very similar to him. But what was special about Abu Bakr is that it is said that he is the only person who accepted Islam with no hesitation. So once the message was given to him, there was no hesitation, and he became Muslim. Other people would hesitate. They would try to ask questions or try to figure it out, but Abu Bakr was naturally inclined, and he embraced Islam, and then he immediately began to spread Islam. So he went to the next category, that is those who were inclined to Tawheed, the oneness of God. And a number of people embraced Islam who later became illustrious companions. Following this, the message then started to spread to the Prophet's tribe. And so the Banu Hashim and the other people living in Mecca at the time began to embrace Islam, and then the Arabs and those who were living with them in the Arabian Peninsula started to come in. So this is it sort of went from the center, and then it goes out. Okay? And the final task was to take the message to all of humanity, not just Arabian Peninsula, but all of humanity. The other aspect that's interesting about this message is that it was tailor-made also for the jinn. And the jinn are beings made from smokeless fire who live in a parallel world. They make contact with people, some places regularly, and other places very seldom. I lived with a family in Medina from Tibet. And Tibet is a very high mountainous country. And they describe their relationship with the jinn like it's something common, that they knew there were these otherly beings that were there. And the jinn inhabit mountainous areas and deserted buildings and whatnot. So the Tibetans, they had contact. And within Arabian culture at the time, the jinn were known, and even the name the ghoul, because in English we will say a ghost is the spirit of somebody who has died, but a ghoul is a wicked one. Okay? Al-Ghul is an Arabic word. And literally it meant an evil demon. And so this was another aspect of the message. But the reality of the message itself is that it would encounter opposition. Because in believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, believing that there is one God, you would come in opposition with people who believed in other than that. And when the scholars look at belief in terms of the actual application, it's one thing to say that there is a creator. Many cultures say that, many societies. It's one thing to praise the creator and to respect the creator. But when you start worshiping the creator, and when you believe that all worship should be for the creator and not the sun, not the other gods, that's the clash. So the clash came in what is known as Tawheed al-Ibadah, and that is when you unify your understanding of worship, uluhiyah, the divine being. And once that is there, once that is solidified, it brings a reaction. So this hostility came against the Muslims. And this is an important point because part of the propaganda which is said against Muslims is that Muslims are aggressive people. So we are the ones that have the curved sword forcing people to accept Islam and always, aggressive and prone toward violence. But the reality, again, when you look at the life of the Prophet ﷺ, it was the opposite. That the hostility came from outside, from other forces. And this is important for us to understand, especially those who are embracing Islam or those who are interested in Islam. The Christians, for instance, when they speak of Jesus Christ and Christianity, they generally look at Jesus and his followers as people who suffered. They were non-violent people. And there's even non-violent movements based on Christianity. And so this concept is something that all of the prophets actually went through. And in looking at this stage in the life of the Prophet ﷺ, then we will see that in the beginning, Muslims were not the aggressors. And as a matter of fact, it was not until the Prophet, peace be upon him, left Mecca, which is 13 years, first part of his life, and then went on his migration, then Allah gave the Muslims the ability or the permission to fight back. But in the beginning, they were not allowed to fight. They were not allowed. So this is what you would call today non-violent civil disobedience. They have terminologies for this now. And they say Martin Luther King and Mahatma Gandhi and different people, the non-violent revolutions. Okay, so the first 13 years, which is the majority of the life of the Prophet, was actually a non-violent spiritual revolution. And that flies in the face of what is said about Muslims and the propaganda. So the hostility came, they pressured the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, Abu Talib, because Abu Talib was like his father in a sense, taking care of him, his guardian. So he was put under pressure by the leaders of Quraysh, and words started to go around the society, and threats started to happen. And then the common people, because Quraysh is sort of an upper class, a ruling class, but the masses of the people were then incited against the Muslims. Okay, and so this is important to understand because we are, to a certain extent, in a Meccan period here, being a minority and finding ourselves in opposition sometimes to the local understanding. Just recently, and it's come now, that there's this vehicle riding around Toronto, Ontario, okay, and the news told us that the Toronto Police Hate Crime Unit is investigating a truck that was seen displaying anti-Muslim messages as it drove around the city this week. That's right now. Okay? And one of the images is of Muslims praying and protesting in Nathan Phillips Square. So this is real. This is happening right now in Toronto where we are speaking from. And this is an incitement. So by showing this and making Muslims appear to be a violent group that are protesting and causing confusion, the average person who doesn't really know, maybe they don't know what's happening in the world, and they see this, they will say, well, yes, these are violent people. So this is what we now call Islamophobia, right? And Islamophobia is this irrational feeling or fear of Islam and Muslims. And so I want to emphasize this point that we touched on early in an earlier session, because this is the time when this particular point came in. And that is that the Meccan leadership wanted to have some sort of organized response. They wanted to organize themselves. Not enough just to incite people, but they wanted to have some sort of program. So they called a council meeting. And these are their elders. This would be their parliament, their congress. It is the Nadwa. It's called the Nadwa place. And they asked one of their leaders, Al-Walid ibn al-Mughira. They chose him as the leader to lead this council meeting. And basically their intention is to try to find some way to stop the message. They were afraid to fight the Prophet himself because of tribalism. He was from Banu Hashim. And even though Banu Hashim, for the most part, they were not Muslims for the most part, however, there's a loyalty in tribalism. So if you attack people in their tribe, they take it personal. So they couldn't physically just take his life. So they thought that if we cannot kill the messenger, then we'll destroy the message. And now how can we do this? And this is what they will call today like a think tank. So you gather together your people and you organize yourself. And this is what happens in many campuses. They open up Islamic studies departments that you would think is an innocent department to study Islam the way you study biology and chemistry. But when you get in the course, you realize they are studying Islam to find weaknesses in it. And they actually confuse the people who take the course. And that was the intention, because most of the Islamic studies courses in the West were developed by Christian missionaries to train people about what is Islam, and then to equip them to go into the Muslim world, and then to cause confusion, and to bring people into Christianity. So they wanted to know, like, what can we call him? There's got to be some name. The same way you see this truck going around in Toronto, for those who may have just come in. And this is a real situation that we're dealing with right now, riding around the city, okay, which is inciting the people. Okay, so it's showing Muslims in Nathan Phillips Square, trying to make Muslims seem violent, right? So violent, intolerant, against society, oppressive of women. You see, these are the terminologies. So they first said to Al-Walid, they suggested the word kahin. And a kahin is a wizard. They were the ones that took care of the idols in the Kaaba itself. But Al-Walid was an honest person. He wanted an honest propaganda. And he said, no, he's not a kahin. Then they said, why don't we say he's Majnoon, that he's insane. And Al-Walid said he's not insane, he's very calm. He does not have any of the signs of a person who is insane. So they said, why don't we call him Sha'ir? Why don't we say he's a poet? But Al-Walid said, no, this thing that he's reading, the Quran, that they call, this is not poetry. It rhymes, but it's like prose. It's telling a story in rhythm. It's not poetry. Then they said, okay, let's call him Sahir, or magician. And Walid said, no, you can't call him a magician because he's not blowing in knots like some of the spells. People try to put on spells in Mecca. So that's not going to work. And initially they rejected everything, and finally they agreed on Sahir. So we'll say that he's a magician because he's breaking up families. And the magicians will break up families, and they'll cause confusion. And the Quran itself sort of like mystifies people because the rhythm in it. So that's the closest they could get. Again, this is the propaganda that they are setting up to try to stop the message. And two people in particular, Abu Jahl and Al-As ibn Wa'il as-Sahmi, they led the attack. And especially Al-As, the verbalist. Abu Jahl was very physical. But Al-As, he would travel around anytime he heard that the Prophet ﷺ was going to a caravan or any public thing, he would come in back and say to the people, this man is abtar. This man is cut off. He's useless because he has no sons. And in this society, having a son is important for them because it's a male-oriented society in terms of lineage, in terms of fighting and whatnot. So if you don't have anybody to fight for you or to make poetry about you, then you are, to a certain extent, you're cut off. Okay, so this is the concept that they were spreading. And it's at this point, again, that the Quran is revealed. And this is, again, shows us how the Quran is revealed. So it's not just a book you pick up on a shelf. This is an incident that's happening to him, that's really bothering him. And the Quran then comes down saying, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Inna a'tainaka al-Kawthar, fasalli li rabbika wanhar, inna shaniyaka huwa al-abtar. So the Quran says, verily, we have given you an abundance, Al-Kawthar. So pray to your Lord and sacrifice, and surely your enemy is the one who will be cut off. So this is how the Quran is coming now. See, if you don't understand the sabab al-nuzul, the reason why this came, you wouldn't understand the power of this. You just read the chapter and say, oh, that's 10 words. It's the smallest chapter in the Quran. I guess I should memorize that, right? Because if you want to read a fast express salat, then you got to read Kawthar. Short. Everybody can memorize this chapter. There's no excuse. But if you understand the power that was manifested at this time, this is not just something small. This is something which is expanding and will continue to expand, because Al-Kawthar means a river in paradise, Al-Kawthar, which we believe will flow down onto a pond or a lake in the Day of Judgment, Al-Hawd. People will gather around the Hawd, those who have faith. Okay, its liquid is white as milk, sweet as honey, cold as ice. And if you drink once from Al-Kawthar, you'll never be thirsty again. So that is a beautiful thing. This was given to the Prophet ﷺ, and on the Day of Judgment, he will meet his companions. The Muslims will meet those who are sincere Muslims, not hypocrites, or not Muslims on Friday only, right? But sincere Muslims will meet at this place called Al-Kawthar. But Al-Kawthar also means something that expands and expands and expands. Okay, so this is the message. And the scholars have looked at this to say, okay, this Quran itself, it connects, and the message connects you with the Creator. His followers continue to expand. This is Al-Kawthar. The message continues to expand. It's expanding up until today. Even in this year itself, with all the repression in the world, there's more people accepting Islam than we've seen in a long time. That is Al-Kawthar. Okay, and then the final part of it says, Inna shaniyaka huwa al-abtar, that the one who cursed you, remember, Al-As, he will be cut off. And right now, if you went to Arabic-speaking people or Muslims and asked who is Al-As ibn Wa'il al-Sahmi, 99.9% do not know. Only scholars would know who he is. You might know his son, Amr ibn Al-As, or his grandson, Abdullah ibn Amr ibn Al-As, radiallahu anhum. They're great companions, but Al-As is cut off. But the Prophet ﷺ, his name has now been recognized as the most used name on earth, is this. Because the Muslims, name their sons especially, have this name. So that is like a standing miracle. Okay, so don't worry about this. Pray to your Lord, sacrifice, don't worry, because the one who has insulted you, that person will get cut off. And so the second stage of the repression, and this is something which is deep, and you can read more about it in the text. This is where some of his companions really started to get problems. And his uncle Hamza embraced Islam, very powerful person. And so the Quraysh got afraid, and they tried to use bribery. So they would try to bribe the uncle of the Prophet himself. This is typical to today. People who stand up for Islam, against the system, so to speak. The first thing they want to do, they're going to bribe you, give you a nice job. Why don't you become a university professor? And we'll put you far in the mountains somewhere so nobody can hear you. We'll give you a good job. We'll give you a Hollywood contract. It's bribery, right? That's very common. If that doesn't work, they'll come right to you. They'll negotiate with you. If that doesn't work, assassination. And this is a system up until today which is being used to repress leaders. Not just Muslims, it's people who stand against the colonial system, so to speak. This is how they destroy the leaders or one of the aspects of the destruction of the leaders. So the second stage included these aspects. Okay? And of course, Islamophobia continued. This is important to understand because the propaganda is that the Muslims were aggressive. The Muslims were the violent ones. That's the opposite of what actually happened. And for somebody who had love in their heart for Jesus, for Isa alayhi salam, and many people who have Christian background have a special place in their heart for Jesus because of the suffering of Jesus and his companions. Okay, when you recognize what happened to the Muslims, that same love will develop in your heart for the believers. And the third stage, and we will be looking at this as we go on in our classes. The third stage is to torture and to murder the defenseless people, the companions of the Prophet. So they couldn't kill him, he had his tribe, so they started to torture his companions. Again, that's different than the propaganda, right? This is not Muslims torturing people. This is Muslims who are actually suffering. And one of his companions, Bilal ibn Rabah, radiallahu anhu, who was East African, Ethiopian they say, but it's really East African origin. He was a believer in one God, and he went through tremendous changes. And he was put on the ground, and his master, Umayyah ibn Khalaf, put a stone on his chest and told him, renounce the faith, and he would say, Ahadun Ahad, one God, one God. He would not renounce the faith. He refused. And he is one of our great symbols, of people, Muslims who resisted. Uthman ibn Affan, radiallahu anhu, who's a famous companion, and eventually became a fairly wealthy person. He was tortured. He was actually put into a straw mat and they lit it on fire. So he was tortured himself. And these torture issues, are not nice, but these are some of the names of the companions. And in the next class, inshallah, we will be going into this in more details. Because of our class tonight will be slightly shortened. But these are some of the names I want you to keep in mind. If you have a chance to research, Mus'ab ibn Umair is another person that we're going to talk about, inshallah, a little bit more in the next period. And also the family of Yasir. His wife was named Sumayya, and his daughter was Ammar. So these are important companions that we will look at, inshallah, in the upcoming class to show you what Muslims actually went through. 13 years they were not allowed to fight. This is what would be called today a non-violent, civil disobedient revolution. It's a non-violent protest. And that's what Muslims were involved in for the majority of the Prophet's life. That's what the message was. That's totally different than what you might hear online or some of the Islamophobic propaganda. So I want to open up the floor for any questions that anybody may have concerning these early stages of the spread of Islam. Floor is open for any questions anybody has. Online? Mm-hmm. Floor is open for any questions or any comments anybody has. Any general questions? The floor is open for that as well. Things that you'd like to know, about Islam. We leave a little bit of time. Next week, inshallah, we'll have more time, for that. This is a post-Eid type of gathering we're having, so it'll be a little short. No.
So the tribalism protected the Prophet, peace be upon him, from them going straight to assassination. Like is that? Like, what about tribalism made it so that they wouldn't want to harm him?
Because, tribalism was very serious in the sense that the feuds going on between groups. So therefore, he is Benu Hashim. He's part of one of the most powerful tribes. So even though his message is different, their blood, like some people used to say, blood is thicker than water. For them, blood is the key thing. So even though he was a Muslim and they weren't, you don't touch somebody in my family. That's how they used to think. So therefore, they did not want to incite a major tribal war in Mecca itself. So then they, used other methods with the Prophet ﷺ. The assassination part, eventually they did come back to that. But in the beginning, no. Okay? Floor is open for any other questions anybody has concerning anything? Yeah.
So the name listed on the slideshow, were they also part of the same tribe as Prophet Muhammad or no?
Of these, which ones?
Just these three.
No, all of these people are not in his tribe. None of them are in his tribe. And this was the problem for people who were accepting Islam who did not have a tribe. If you did not have a powerful tribe in back of you, you're subject to immediate attack. Whereas somebody with a tribe, it would have to be somebody in your tribe who attacks you. Because it's strictly based on tribal things. Like today it would be gang warfare. It's like nation states in the world. You don't touch somebody in my nation state. You see, it's something similar to that, on a lower level. So for this class, inshallah, we're going to be closing early today. Was there something online there? Yeah.
I wanted to ask how the division in Islam came to form Shia and Sunni.
Okay, this is a very big question. The question is, how does the division come to form Shia and Sunni? If you go to islam.ca, which is our website, Islamic Institute of Toronto, then there's a class called Groups and Sects, SECTS in Islam. So it's a course that I did which goes into details about this. So you can get that information, because it's too long to discuss really, at this point in time. You can go on, you can get that, from this course.
And another question, what can we do about the hate on the truck, on the road, and have any government people approach you regarding this incident?
Yes, so what can be done about the propaganda, on the road? I mean, government officials have been contacted. We're publicizing it as much as we can, right? And keep pounding Islamophobia, put it out there, right? And be very vocal, don't hide. We can't hide now. We're going to have to come out, and be very vocal, with our situation. Okay, so with this, we're going to close the class because of, our gathering today. And inshallah, next week, we will continue on to understand what happened in the repression and what followed that, which is one of the beautiful parts of Islam that followed this repression. So I leave you with these thoughts, and I ask Allah to have mercy on me and you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.